Well, with all of these flights being scheduled and all of these passengers making decisions and booking itineraries, they're going to show up someplace. If we look at the flight status screen for lorry lines, we see many different flights that have flight numbers, origins, destinations. In this case, this is many flights going to their hub in Dallas-Fort Worth. Flights of varying types of aircraft and in various stages of their travel. As we see, many of those are in transit. If we look at the bottom of the screen, it's 8:40 Eastern, which means that this flight, for example, from Rochester to Dallas is taxiing out. We have some that are going to be leaving soon that are currently boarded, and others that are in the process of boarding. All these flights have different numbers of passengers on board, and we can see how many are in first class, business, economy, and the total. If we select a flight, in this case Flight 499 from Dulles in Washington, D.C. to Dallas-Fort Worth, in this case it's a Boeing 757 again, and it's in transit. It was scheduled to depart at 8:18 and arrive in Dallas at 10:10 local time, and apparently it did leave on time at 8:18 and is currently scheduled to arrive 7 minutes early. There's 197 passengers on board, 10 of which are in first class and the rest of them are in coach, which, given the size of a 757, that's 98% full. But what about those passengers and their preferences? Where are they going from and where are they going to? If we were to click on today's flight details, we would see the details screen. And again, we are looking at Flight 499 from Dulles to Dallas-Fort Worth. And we see that we have some of the details on this selected flight. There's our total passengers, 197 out of 200, 98% full. Toward the middle of the screen, though, we see individual blocks of passengers. In this case, the selected one is 18 passengers, institutional passengers, probably from the government in D.C., that are traveling to Dallas-Fort Worth. As we select that and we look down at the bottom, we see that this passenger block's itinerary is only this one flight, Flight 499 from Dulles to Dallas-Fort Worth, and they're booked in economy class. If we were to select a different block, for example, these 9 passengers that are going from the D.C. area to Kansas City, Missouri, we see that they're flying on 2 different flights, 499, the one we're looking at, and then Flight 168 from Dallas to Kansas City. Notice that the flight arrives at 10:10 and their flight to Kansas City departs Dallas at 10:35, giving them 25 minutes to change planes. If we select yet a third group of passengers on this flight, in this case the 10 business travelers going from Boston to Kansas City, we're going to notice something different. Well, they have to use 3 flights to get from Boston to Kansas City. In this case, they arrived at Washington Dulles at 7:47 to get on Flight 499, which departed at 8:18, and as we already know, arrives in Dallas at 10:10, and they leave for Kansas City at 10:35. But we notice that of those 3 flights, 2 of them are on lorry lines, like we've been talking about. Well, the first one is on A to B Airways, Flight 213. Well, the passenger was smart enough to use 2 different airlines to get to where he needed to go. Another thing we can also notice is that on 2 of the flights he traveled on economy. However, on Flight 499, the one we're talking about, this traveler was booking in first class. Well, why is that? If we look at the passenger's preferences, which range from 0 to 3 in the 6 different categories, we notice that their preference for cost is a 0. Really, they don't care about the cost. Other things are more important to them, such as comfort. So they were quite comfortable booking in first class. This brings us to the point that not all airfares are the same. They may, of course, differ from destination to destination, but they also could differ over the course of the day. If we were to look at this example of 8 different flights from JFK to Chicago's Midway, they have different fares. Now we could set them all together by clicking on the Edit Fares for this route button, and we could change those as a whole for this particular route from JFK to Midway. On the other hand, if we were to click on Edit Fares for the selected flight, we could change one flight at a time. A reason for this may be, for example, flight number 100 that departs at 7 in the morning from JFK might be a very highly traveled flight, be more popular. Well, the law of supply and demand would tell us that maybe we should raise the fares above what the normal flight would cost. The same may go for an evening flight that departs JFK at 6:18 in the evening. and arrives at Midway at a little after 7 Central. We could also change those fares individually to be more profitable at that particular time of the day. Certainly anyone that's done any amount of air travel is well aware that the weather plays a key part in keeping things moving smoothly. Well, while it's a headache for us travelers, it's certainly a nightmare for the airlines, and our simulation wouldn't be complete unless we included weather modeling. Whenever the game is run, it generates random weather systems that are based on realistic criteria. These systems grow, shrink, change direction, change speed, change intensity. If we were to zoom in on the one that's over the Mississippi Valley in this case, we would see that we have a significant weather system going from central Indiana and Illinois all the way down into central Texas, with a variety of different types of precipitation and different strengths and intensities. If we were to click on St. Louis, however, and look at their current weather conditions, we'd see that they're under a severe storm at the moment. However, if we were to let the simulation run, that would change to just heavy precipitation, and eventually it would move out of the area so that there would just be low visibility, and end up just being some low ceilings, which would of course affect operations at the St. Louis airport, but definitely not as much as a severe storm would. Of course, part of dealing with weather as an airline is knowing what's coming and when. There will be a weather forecast function in the game that doesn't just show what the weather is like now, but what it will be in 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 12 hours, even a day ahead of time. However, just like real life, that's not always going to be accurate because, again, these weather systems and the individual cells do change direction, change speed, change size, change intensity, but the weather forecasts will be reasonably accurate. The point being, you don't always know exactly what you're going to get. If we look at this different example with a severe weather system over the Rocky Mountains, we don't know exactly where it's going and how. Right now it's 1 o'clock, if you look at the bottom of the screen, in the Mountain Time Zone. This is at 1:30. It's not quite as severe as it was. At 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock, 7 o'clock, things look a lot different than they did 6 hours ago. Or even 10 o'clock, where there's still isolated pockets of heavy precipitation, but it is not the band of weather that it once was.